This is a heavy topic. It's a super heavy topic. But today we are not going to talk about the loss of control. We're going to talk about a shift and planning ahead and just making sure that you have the right conversations, because true control is making sure that you make those choices ahead of time while you still have the ability to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and have our speakers come up, or our panelists rather. You guys can go ahead and come up. So we've got 3 today, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment. But I have Alina, who is an attorney, and she's going to talk about how things work legally. And Cheryl helps us with, she helps a lot of people with senior placement. So she's going to talk about real life examples. And then Mike is with Purview. Purview is one of our education partners. And he is going to speak from the standpoint of when maybe you don't have family close or children at all, or anyone who you would choose to help you make decisions when you can no longer do so. So one thing that I do want to remind everyone is that we do take questions at the end. So if it is your first time, which I would love to see that, by the way, how many of you are first timers? Do I have any? Yeah, that's several. Awesome. So we do not take questions during our seminar. We have a Q&A time at the end. So please make sure that you are writing down your questions so you don't forget. And then at the end, we'll answer those questions. Also, there are as many questions about this topic as there are people in the room. And so I promise you that we will not answer everybody's question, but I want everyone to ask their question if it doesn't get answered. So if we don't have if we don't answer what you're here to learn, I want you to write a star on your yellow feedback form, and which I didn't bring one with me. Write a star on your yellow feedback form and write your question on it. And we will do our very, very best to make sure that we connect you with the right person to get your question answered, okay? So I want to start, let's see, we've got our speakers. I want to start with definitions. I know that's tiny, but you have it in front of you too. So I'm going to direct your attention to your handout, okay? I want us to all start from a level playing field. And I'm going to let Alina, our attorney, because I'm not one of those, thank heavens. I am not an attorney. So I'm going to let Alina talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about the difference between capacity and competence. And then also, if she can just give us an overview of what a power of attorney is versus what a guardianship is. And then we're going to get into the program.
Okay, great. I hope everybody can hear me. So regarding capacity versus competence, from a legal perspective, these terms are interchangeable. We tend to use capacity when we're talking about estate planning, probate, and guardianships. And what that means is, can you understand what you're doing? And can you effectively participate in your legal representation? If you can answer yes to those things, then you will have the capacity to sign documents such as a power of attorney. If you cannot understand those things or effectively participate, then you might, if you haven't already put a power of attorney in place, then you might be subject to a guardianship. An adult guardianship is when you don't have a power of attorney. The only way for a person to get authority to access your finances to help you pay your bills or to get authority to make healthcare decisions for you is to go to court and get a guardianship over you. Did you want me to talk about cost at this point?
No, we'll talk about that in a minute.
So basically, a power of attorney, you get to choose who you want to have those authorities to help take care of you when you can no longer take care of yourself. But when you have an adult guardianship, you don't necessarily get to make those decisions. Those decisions are going to be made by the court.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I want our panelists, I want to give them an opportunity to tell you why they're here. So if each of you will introduce yourself and tell why you feel like this subject is so important to you.
My name is Mike Giese. I'm with Purview Life. I'm one of the educational partners here. Purview Life is a life care management concierge service. We will act as a legal guardian, as a medical power of attorney, as a durable power of attorney or successor trustee to somebody who doesn't have an adult child or a loved one or a trusted friend to act in that capacity. Really to kind of oversimplify what we do is we present ourselves to potential clients as a bonus family member.
Perfect. I love that. Alina?
My name is Alina Sorrell, and I'm an estate planning attorney at Seda Law Firm. I've been in practice for about 6 years now, with the majority of that time practicing in probate, guardianships, and estate planning. So I've switched to estate planning focus because I do like to help people plan so that they don't have to wind up in a contested probate or guardianship situation.
And I have to say, we really are so thankful for Alina, because if you notice on some of your papers, there's a name that says Shannon. And we love Shannon. She is also an attorney for, what is Shannon's last name? I'm blank.
Shannon Lane.
So Shannon is the guardianship attorney for Seda Law Firm, and she is very, very ill. And so last night at 9:30, Alina, who also is very accomplished in guardianships, did a quick panel prep with me, went over all of Shannon's notes, and she's going to do a really great job. And you won't see Roberto Seda here today because he's covering for Alina in court. So we're really, really thankful that she joined us today.
Thanks.
Cheryl, can you introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? No. Now can you hear me? Thank you. In my line of work, I'm not used to needing a microphone, so you'll have to be patient with me. I'm Cheryl Beaver. I work for a company called Compass Senior Living Solutions. And what we do is we help people navigate placement. We're senior living placement advisors. To simplify it, we help you find independent living, assisted living, memory care communities when you're in need of those, when you're looking for that change. The reason that I'm here and so passionate about this topic is the way that my line of work, and the direction it's gone is that most of my referrals come from hospitals and rehabs where people have waited until there's been a health event or something that has caused or forced the conversation. And so one of the first questions I ask is about power of attorney and if everything is set up. And most of the time, the answer is no. So I am so thrilled to be here in front of you wonderful people that are not in the middle of a crisis.
Well, and I have to tell you too, we called Herb because Herb knows a lot about people stepping in when someone can't make a decision. And I was expecting him to give me maybe the name of a doctor or something like that. And he said, no, if you're going to talk about this, you have to talk to Cheryl. So we talked to Cheryl, and we're excited to hear what she has to say. So how many of you have had to make a decision for a family member or loved one who could not make a decision for themselves? How many? Yep, perfect. And keep your hands up if you enjoyed that process. I'm not surprised. It's not fun. It is stressful. There's a lot of second guessing that is involved. And many of the people that we talk to that have been in that situation do not want to put anyone else in that situation on their behalf because it's not fun. So while this conversation is heavy and hard, it is important. I want everyone to know what their plan is and who they need to communicate that to. So without further ado, let's see. Alina, I'm gonna start with you. Who actually determines when someone can no longer make decisions? Who is that determiner?
So as an attorney, I do have to assess my clients for the capacity to enter into a legal document. However, if they're beyond that point and we're looking at a guardianship, the court is going to make that decision based on usually a doctor's evaluation.
Okay. And as far as planning ahead for a POA, like how does that determinant typically happen? Like when does that POA go into effect?
So you have options when you're doing a power of attorney. You can make it effective immediately. So as soon as you sign it, that person can be your agent. But you also have the option to state that you want it effective only upon your incapacity. So that means that at least 2 physicians have stated in writing that you can no longer take care of your personal and financial affairs.
Okay. And Cheryl, I feel like it was you. If it wasn't, I'm sorry. I'm going to call you out. Was it you that said something along the lines of, if it's determined, if you have a concern, everything stops? Was that you that said everything stops, or was that Shannon when we were talking?
I believe it was Shannon.
Okay.
We were talking, that was in the context too of when the power of attorney becomes ineffective at the moment of death. We were talking about that conversation. But yes, if something is not determined.
Yeah. So like the whole process has to stop and go to court. Is that true?
Correct. At the moment in time that you no longer have capacity, meaning that you don't understand exactly what you're doing, or you can't communicate effectively, as, for example, to tell us who these people are that you want to be your agent and what the relationship is, etc., then we realize that you don't have the capacity to enter into that legal agreement. So then we would say you need to think about doing a guardianship instead.
Yeah. And I think that some of the delays that she talked about were delays in care and sometimes your finances getting frozen.
Sure, because if you can no longer do these things for yourself, if you don't have capacity, obviously you're having some issues managing your financial affairs and your medical decisions. And the process to get the authority vested in your guardian takes a while. I would say it's going to take 60 days. In some cases, there's an emergency situation that you could apply for. It's going to cost extra money, but it's possible to do that. There is going to be some delay, though, in having someone appointed if you have to go through a guardianship.
Okay. And Cheryl, you were talking about, and Amy and I were talking about this earlier too. We couldn't remember the acronym, but what is the test that you were talking about that you guys perform?
Well, there's a SLUMS test that many primary care physicians will perform, or a mini mental test. While I feel like it's the standard, and I certainly don't want to, I'm not a healthcare professional. Sometimes if you ask me those questions and you ask me to pass that test, it's kind of challenging. If you've ever had it, they'll give you 3 words, see all the head shake, then they ask you to tell you what those 3 words were 2 minutes later, and I'm thinking, I have no idea. So, but it is one of the standard tests, and depending on what your score is, there's a certain level or below that a doctor will say, I don't feel that you're competent to make decisions.
What's an example of some of the questions? Do you know?
Yeah, they will give you, well, they always ask, what state are you in? What city are you in? Where do you live? But then they'll do questions like, or can you count backwards from, who's had it? 20? Oh, there you go.
Count backwards from 20.
There you go.
I did the lux backwards, and then it was a 5 word.
Oh,
Avenue up on the city of London.
Okay, so
and you still remembered it.
Well, I was retired team.
Oh.
So Fran said that she had to count backwards from 20. She had to do her months backwards, which I don't know if I could do that very quickly. And she,
remember 5 words instead of 3 that you have to. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell me what things look like when a family has planned versus not. When you go sit down with someone and a family has planned versus they haven't done any planning.
Well, first of all, my initial, when we have a referral for a client, the client is the patient. And again, about 90% of the time, our referrals are people who have had a health event or who have had a diagnosis and they're at home and they're declining pretty quickly. So they've got to have some care set up, whether that's care in the home or whether that's looking at a move. Because a move is major, no matter what season of life you're in. But if it's kind of required, because having someone at home is so much more expensive, a private duty caregiver, than moving someone, sometimes the move is the only option in the area of the financial planning. The minute I go to meet with the client, though, my first question, nobody at a health event is at their best in their life to absorb information or answer all my questions to start determining or putting together a suggested plan. So I want to...
Well, I caught there.
Okay, can you hear me better? Just to recap that part, when I'm meeting with someone for the first time, it's typically the patient or someone who's had the health event. So what I need right away is to know who their person is, who's your advocate, who is your support, where's your support system? Because otherwise the information I'm giving and questions I'm asking can be overwhelming if you're trying to recover from a stroke, right? And so our conversations immediately take a turn if someone says, I don't really have a power of attorney set up, but my daughter lives out of state and I talk to her once a month and I'm close to her, but she's really busy and she can't really be involved and help me. So depending on what their answer is, immediately I will either call the support system in and loop them into the conversation to be a part of our decision-making and planning. Or we have the conversation, if you don't have a power of attorney set up, it's so important that you have someone who can make decisions on your behalf. And my next step is to pursue getting them a power of attorney and walking through who could that person be in your life.
And you were talking about the DIY forms and things like that. What do you want to say about that?
You can go on oklahoma.gov and you can print out a power of attorney. They have durable power of attorneys.
Hey, here's a pro tip. Hold that sucker on your chin. Feels weird, but...
Thank you. I want you all to be able to hear me, so thank you. You can go on oklahoma.gov, and there are power of attorney forms that you can print out at the library or from your home. Durable power of attorney, medical, and financial. Becky, Elisa, they refer to those as DIY, do-it-yourself kind of power of attorneys. Now, on those forms, you still need a notary to notarize them, and you need 2 witnesses. The witnesses don't have to be anyone in particular. It can't be anyone related to the patient or anyone that would benefit upon their death. Other than that, if we're in a hospital or a rehab, a nurse on the floor could be a witness, right? You could find witnesses, but 2 witnesses and a notary. The reason this is important to bring this up, and we've got an attorney here, is there is a difference between printing one off online and having a notary sign it. Now, in the situation of a hospital where it's urgent or we're in a rehab and we have to get a power of attorney in place, I have a coworker who's a notary, and for $30, that pays for her gas. She'll go to the patient, and we'll get that POA signed and set up. Many times that serves our purposes in the moment. However, we will tell the families when we get you out of this crisis and back home with care or moved, we recommend that you see an attorney because this power of attorney will not serve all the purposes that you're probably going to need.
And yeah, I'd like to speak a little bit more about that. I will say that type of a power of attorney should just be a placeholder until you get one drawn up by an attorney. I review a lot of power of attorneys in my line of work, and I have yet to see a DIY document that meets my specific requirements. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about people who tried to use one they got off the internet and it didn't meet what they were wanting to do. So it didn't let that happen. For example, our power of attorney that we use in our office is 26 pages long. The one you get online is going to be a couple of pages. So there's a lot of information that's left out of those. So I highly recommend that if you have to use one of those in an emergency situation, you do consult an attorney eventually to get a better form for yourself going forward.
Yeah, thank you. I've seen a lot of those go sideways too. All right, Mike. So what's the most common situation that brings someone to you for the first time?
normally a triggering event of some kind. We'll get either a referral from APS or DHS on abuse, or a triggering event like a stroke or a traumatic brain injury. And those people might not have an adult child or someone to take care of them, so they'll fall into our lap. Those are usually the main ones.
Yeah. And we are going to for sure spend some time talking about who is a good guardian, who is a good POA, and maybe not. So we are going to talk about that. And I know you have a lot of insight on that as well. Cheryl, you talked a little bit about this too, but what triggering events are you typically seeing on your side, people calling you?
Typically, that's such a big, broad question for us because, again, when in the world of senior living, we're all navigating, trying. There's a dance, and I could be one of you as a participant too. So I say we. We're trying to navigate our lives, and we're independent for so long that many times I know I'm guilty of thinking, "Oh, I'm healthy. I'm not going to have a health event. I'm not going to have an issue for a while." And we put off some of the really tough conversations or decisions. Being in this job has been eye-opening for me because the majority of the triggers for me are a husband or wife calling me because their spouse has had a health event. A lot of times you have couples, one might have some cognitive decline, and one might have physical decline, but the way they partner in life, they're able to live at home for a long time by themselves. But the moment something changes, that's a very common call for me because in their mind, they were in a rhythm that life worked just fine. So again, a health event in the situation are the biggest things that I see, Becky, of a couple where they have a rhythm that life has worked and one has had some kind of a health event or decline, and that makes the home situation not safe anymore, so we've got to make some decisions quick. A lot of times we are seeing a lot of younger onset Alzheimer's. Herb can even attest to this. 40 and 50-year-old wives or husbands whose spouse has been diagnosed and they've still got to work full time, but their spouse needs care. And maybe they have been in a car accident and they're in the hospital because the one with dementia was still driving. They were still in the new stages. So now we've got a situation where we've got to problem solve. So when I say health event, there's a lot of specific ones we're seeing more than not. Strokes are huge right now. 40, 50, 60-year-olds, life stops for the spouse that's healthy, and all of a sudden they become a caregiver, and we've got to address a whole situation. So,
yeah. I know. I love that you said that because I see that a lot too, where, one spouse is very, very, sharp as a tack, but maybe physical decline, right? And then the other one, vice versa. And either one of those, that balance is so fine-tuned that if one of them shifts a little bit, it throws the entire balance of their family unit off. So I love that you said that.
Can I give a brief example?
I would love that. Yeah, please.
So I grew up here, didn't live here for years and raise our family, but my band director from Western Heights High School, where I went to high school, he's 88, and I placed he and his wife and helped move them. They had moved to Texas and they wanted to move back here. So they both they sold their home in Texas, moved to an independent living here. She has some memory issues. He's pretty high functioning and kind of manages all of life. He got a COVID booster week before last, and it threw him, put him in the bed. He was so sick, he fell, got a brain bleed, fractured 2 ribs. Well, the only way they're able to be in independent living is because he manages all the affairs, even though she physically has jobs that help them. They complement each other as a couple. But the minute he went down, he called me from the hospital and said, "I'm going down. Our whole world, Mary's not even okay at the apartment by herself. Can you move us to an assisted living tomorrow?" I'm like, well, Mr. Pennington, I'm good, but I'm not that good. But my point being, I said, I've been trying to get you to have a plan B and a plan C when something happens with either one of you, and he's so confident that they'll be fine.
Yeah.
They now have a plan B this week.
We all need to have, listen, if we can have our plan A, I think that's great. That's what I want for everybody, right? But having a plan B and having a plan C are so important. And that's why we're here today. So to deeper our understanding, I want, so guardianship is when you're not planning ahead, because obviously if you've planned ahead, then you've got a POA put in place that can step in. So I want you to know logistically what not planning ahead looks like, because it's important to know why. Why is that important? So Elena, tell us logistically what the guardianship process looks like.
So most of our guardianship clients come to us initially requesting a power of attorney. And when we assess or learn of their diagnoses and things of that nature, we realize it's going to be a guardianship situation. We're usually contacted by a loved one, a neighbor, just someone who's noticed this person is in decline and needs some help. So in that situation, who winds up being the ward, which is what the person who's under the guardianship is called, they haven't chosen the person that's stepping up. It's just someone who has stepped up on their behalf. It may not be the person that they had wanted in that position. And unfortunately, sometimes it may be someone with some nefarious, motivations. But as far as proceeding with the guardianship, we have to, first of all, make sure that that person that's applying for the guardianship is qualified. They cannot be a felon, and they cannot have filed a bankruptcy recently, because they have to be the fiduciary for this person. We have to draw up a petition, submit that to the court, and get a hearing date. We have to show up to the hearing date with the ward after they're served notice, and talk to the judge about all the circumstances. It's a very public thing. It happens in open court, versus your power of attorney can take over privately. No one ever has to know that you're in a decline or things of that nature. But we talk about very specific details of your personal life during this hearing. Usually, if nobody's contested it, and the judge is satisfied that this person is qualified to be your guardian, they're going to issue letters of guardianship that give that person the authority over your entire life. They're going to be able to access all of your finances and make all of your healthcare decisions for you, decide where you live and under what circumstances you live. Going forward, it's an ongoing process. Once it's set up, the court stays involved until your death, or until, if some situations, if it's an injury, maybe you recover your capacity and you can exit the guardianship. But until that time, or until your death, the guardian has to show up to do an annual report to the court about your finances, the state of your health, etc. And it can be a very thorough report requiring a thorough accounting of all the monies that have been spent. So it's an ongoing process with ongoing expenses.
So can you give us, and Mike, I really want you to talk about the day-to-day, but before we do that, can you, Alina, do you have a ballpark amount on the cost of that?
So just to get started in a guardianship, the base is going to be probably around $3,000 to $4,000.
Okay. And that's if it's fast.
That's if there's no complications, no contestations, no additional hearings, etc. And that's if the guardian handles their own annual reporting. If an attorney has to get involved for that, I would expect annually it to be at least $1,000 extra per year.
Okay. So Mike, because guardianships is part of what Purview does, tell us a little bit about the day-to-day duties, and I want you to talk a little bit about the accounting work that's included and things like that.
Yeah, okay. So first I'd probably add, you can become guardian of a person and or an estate, or both at times. There is a delineation sometimes.
Okay.
So we have both. We're guardians of some people and some just estates, and then of both. It just really kind of depends on the individual ward's situation on how that works. But day to day, I kind of view guardianship as kind of like being a parent. You're kind of responsible for this person. You need to be sure they're in a safe location or a facility. Make sure they have the meds that they need. See the doctors as appropriate. things like that. And things will arise. You'll get a call from a facility or wherever your ward is, and you need to deal with some things pretty fast sometimes. And sometimes it's simply you can, Amazon something to the facility for them real quickly if they need something. Annual report-wise, it really kind of depends on the judge. Every judge is different and have their own idiosyncrasies. So we've had 100-page annual reports before and 2-page annual reports before. If there's nothing happened over the course of the last year for your ward, it might just be simply they're still in the same location, same health, no triggering events, everything's fine, but guardianship needs to be continued because they are still without capacity. Or it could be you're the guardian of the estate as well, and you handle paying their bills, paying their insurance. All those things need to be kept up, and then you have to account for every single penny of the money that you manage.
So it sounds like the guardian that takes over needs to be highly organized. Yeah. And if someone here needs to become a guardian for someone, how do they learn how to do that? How does that reporting, does the judge tell them?
No, there's a handbook on guardianship online. I'm sure every state has different, mandates. I know Oklahoma's got several that are very specific, but it's just really being put in a position to take care of somebody that you care about. There's, as far as I know, there's no coursework or anything. We have certified care managers at Purview Life, so they study a lot of background stuff on guardianship and care management. So, once you're appointed by the judge is going to hold you responsible.
Okay, perfect. Alina, you were telling me about a situation that you knew of where guardianship went awry. Do you want to tell us about that?
Absolutely. So I had a client some years back, was the son of a gentleman who had signed a power of attorney over to a business associate. And he had declined, and the son was very concerned about the way the power that agent was allowing his father to live. And he was starting to take care of his dad. He went to his house to clean things up. And we decided a guardianship was definitely in order. In fact, it was an emergency guardianship. The agent got their own attorney and cross-claimed to be the guardian. And we had a hearing where we presented photographs to the judge showing that this person had allowed this man who was not very mobile, he had to use a wheelchair, to sleep and spend most of his day and night on a mattress that had rats literally living in it. I can't tell you how dirty the house was, and it was disgusting. You would not want your worst enemy living like that. And so this all came out in open court in front of strangers, that this man was being forced to live this way. And of course, his son was able to get guardianship, thankfully, and get everything cleaned up and get his dad taken care of. But he was living like that for quite some time before it was discovered and remedied. So even when you think you've, appointed someone that you think is going to take care of you, you got to make sure it's a very thoughtful decision, that you very much considered this person and how they're going to treat you in the future when you really have no other recourse.
Yeah. I just think that's, when you were telling me that's so scary, because he felt like he had something lined up, and thank goodness his son went to check on him, and I wonder why he didn't name his son. But anyway, I wasn't there.
Well, it's a family dynamic thing.
Bless. That's what we say, bless. Okay, which leads me to our next point. What makes someone a good POA and somebody who's not a good choice? So now I want you to start thinking about, like, if you found yourself in a situation where someone needed to start making decisions on your behalf, how do you choose that person? So I'll start with Mike. And first, let's start on maybe the positive. What would make somebody a good choice for a POA?
Positive wise, obviously a loving family member. Those are always, I think, the best choice. Worst would be somebody who would have a financial gain as a beneficiary, because we've noticed, just due to family dynamics, sometimes money will change everything. So just really trying to find someone that's either not going to benefit as a beneficiary, and that's a loving family member.
And you were saying too that, and I'll have Alina talk to the different types, but I mean, there's medical POAs, and so you could have different people for different.
Yes, yeah. You can get POs, and they can be very specific and very broad. You should be as specific as possible when you're getting POAs done.
Okay, perfect.
And maybe even a backup POA in some cases.
Okay.
If it's traditionally a husband and a wife, and they're medical power of attorney for each other, and then there's a health event, well, the other person's left without somebody. So it's nice to have a backup already in place because you know that eventually something's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Alina, what are the different types of POAs?
So yeah, you have your durable power of attorney in Oklahoma. That's for financial decisions. And then you have your medical power of attorney, which is for your medical decisions. They're two separate documents in our office. I've seen some attorneys that combine them into one, but we do two separate documents. A lot of times you're choosing the same people for that. And like Mike said, it's usually the spouses or your initial powers of attorney there. And then you want to always have, I say 2 or 3 people to back them up, because we don't know how long we're going to have this document in place. We don't know what life is going to give us in the meantime. So just in case your first choice is not available, you want to have a second and third choice. And they don't have to be the same people. I would say financially, you want someone who is competent and responsible, right? Someone that you know is good with their own money, that you trust to take care of your money and not have, designs on maybe taking a little bit of your money for themselves. So then when it comes to medical, maybe there's someone in your life that is a medical professional or that has more medical knowledge, and you would prefer that person take care of your medical decisions. Well, they also need to have some kind of knowledge about your medical conditions as well. So it could be a family member, it could be a great friend, it could be a neighbor, just those people who you trust to take care of you when you can no longer take care of yourself. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Cheryl, what do you think makes a good POA?
I think I'd just add to that I see a lot of couples who are the power of attorneys for each other, but because a health event has happened, it is so important. I'm just reiterating to have a backup. Like my band instructor and his wife had each other as the power of attorneys. And as of this last week, we've added her. It was a second marriage for them. So they each had children that they were somewhat estranged from. But the wife had a son that agreed that they trusted to be a power of attorney for both of them now. So in a couple situation, absolutely have somebody else in line, because even Mrs. Pennington has some dementia now, and so she would really not be fit to make decisions for Mr. Pennington, health, both medically or financially.
Sure.
The only other thing I'd add to that is I've seen people who have had, like a gentleman that had a long-term chronic disease that would eventually take his life, but he was wheelchair bound, and he had a couple from church that he'd gone to the same church for over 30 years, and he needed at one point to move to have care around the clock, and that couple stepped in for him and did a beautiful job. And so that was a good situation. The other is you have an out-of-state child that may not know your medical condition and be up to date, but you have a friend who lives life with you here. Have that child and the friend be a power of attorney, because that friend has been helpful in many situations.
I do want to also add that you can appoint more than one agent at a time on either of these documents. So you can have co-agents that serve together, and you can make it a unanimous decision between them, or you can say whichever one of them is available can make that decision on their own. So that's something else that you can.
That's so interesting. Okay. I can see that going both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Depends on the family dynamics and the relationships there as well.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Cheryl, you told me a really sweet story about some girls that are taking care of their mom, and they each have different roles in that process. Do you want to talk about that?
Mm-hmm. So I have a sweet 92-year-old lady, and I say sweet. She is feisty also. She's a retired RN, has been very competent to take care of herself for years. She lives in an independent living. She's lived there 6 years. She's in a large 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, which she loves. But in order to keep her there, her daughters, she has 5 daughters. Her daughters have now hired 7 hours of care, private duty care every day. She does not like the private duty caregivers in her apartment all day long, so sometimes she sends them home and ends the shift. And then this precious lady will call her 2 daughters that live local and demand they come over and do what the caregivers were hired to do, only to start the next day over again. Both of these, all 5 daughters are in their early 70s, or in their 70s. 2 of them here both have husbands that they're caring for full-time at home. So this has become a great stress for the daughters that are local. Well, the other 3 daughters fly in and want to have a conversation about leaving mom where she is because mom wants to be in independent living. And why can't the 2 local daughters take care, continue to, is it really that hard? So when Elena has said, family dynamics, that's like a bulk of the conversation and consideration in all of our jobs, because family dynamics all come out and we all have them. So most of us in this industry, there's no judgment, because in the moment of crisis, issues come out. What I was telling Becky and the team was, the daughters are all on as power of attorney, both medical and financial, but they each had roles they played. I really like the way that they have been a support to mom. Mom's got a little bit of memory issues, even though you would not say it's full-blown progressed dementia, but it's enough where she does not acknowledge that she needs care at all. So she will say, I don't even need these caregivers 7 hours a day. I don't know why they have them coming. So it gets complicated to create a plan and execute a plan to not force mom into something she doesn't want to do, but we have to help. Family caregivers, the weight that you all carry, if you are ever in that situation, statistics say that you will have a health event and a health issue before the person that you're caring for if you do not have a support system. So that is on all of our radars when we are advocating for the person who is our client or who we're trying to help. So in this situation, we're still in the journey because the 2 daughters here really want mom in an assisted living. It would be much more cost effective than her being in her independent living. And we have another family meeting this next week to execute the plan. What I like about this in context of power of attorney is they have all of that set up and they do have their roles. If that had not been set up, this would have been an even greater confusing mess. And Alina and Mike, you tell me if I'm wrong, but is guardianship, at the time someone needs guardianship, in my experience, it's usually on the heels of someone that does not have a power of attorney set up or in a crisis, and guardianship needs to be gained in order for someone to navigate the safety of somebody else.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's the situation you're looking at there.
So like for your client, I mean, if she's as feisty as it sounds, she'd probably be real mad having to be dragged to court and have somebody named as a guardian. Like, that is not fun.
Right. That is correct. Do I have a moment to speak on that, to Carrie? So a similar story of another lady the same age lived in her own home in Mustang. Her husband had passed away about a year prior, and they had about 300 acres, just a little home they'd lived in forever. Had not set up power of attorney. Dad had died unexpectedly of a heart attack. Daughter and son thought mom was fine living by herself. She was. They'd go to visit her, and she seemed fine. They'd call her on the phone, but she had some memory loss, and she had a stroke she recovered from, but many times later after a stroke, you can develop what looks like vascular dementia. And I say that because you can start hallucinating or become more delusional. And this is what happened with this particular lady. Daughter really knew that she needed to move mom because mom was calling the police continually around the clock to come out and take care of the 15 children that she was running a daycare for.
Oh, she wasn't really running a daycare. Okay.
There were no children in the home. But the police then called Adult Protective Services. So again, this is a domino effect. They were so concerned about her, but mom was confident that she still had all her faculties and could live on her own. That daughter ended up having to go and check on her every day after around a full-time job, in the morning, before work, after work. And in order to execute a plan to move her, even though her doctor had said she's not competent to make her own decisions, she's not in a safe environment, the daughter had to go get emergency guardianship. And I was traumatized for the daughter because she had to take mom into court to stand before the judge. And I didn't know that process of guardianship. And I'm here to tell you all, the takeaway today, be prepared, because that daughter she said, I will never forgive myself for having mom to stand in front of a court and the judge to deem her incompetent when I just wanted her to always feel respected and loved and preserve her dignity. Why did we not do something before this situation? So getting guardianship, in my experience, is really, really emotional and hard.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? Because like we're all so concerned about, we don't want to lose control. So a lot of people, maybe they cover up memory issues. Maybe they hide it from family members we see that a lot, where family members live far away and they're not seeing them day to day. And they're kind of trying to cover it up because they're trying to maintain that control. But true control is making sure that you have the people lined up so that you can navigate things the way that you want to navigate it. And I made a list after talking to all of you about just some words that you mentioned when we were talking about what a good POA would be. So I want to talk about those. A partner, not a controller. Walking alongside before stepping in. So if you're still making decisions, you can bring your POA along with you for appointments and things like that. They're not making the decision, but they have context, right? Emotionally steady. So if it's not someone who can make a steady decision in an emotionally charged situation, that might not be the person to choose. Available and local, and able to make hard decisions without guilt collapsing them. Those are words that you guys said, not me. When we were talking about this, that came from our conversations. So Mike, what should families be talking about right now that they're avoiding?
By trade, Becky is a realtor, and she would tell you the most important word in real estate is location, location, location. Well, in aging care, it's planning, planning, planning. If you do not have, so the first question that I ever ask anybody who tries to engage with our services is, do you have a will dictating what happens to you and your stuff? And do you have an advance directive? Those are going to be the tools that are going to help whoever helps taking care of you in the future do what your wishes are. So if you don't have a will, and not an updated one, not one from 40 years ago when you got married, an updated will and an advance directive, you need to call SATA Law immediately today and get that done. Because if you kick that can down the road, there's guaranteed going to be a health event, and it's going to be too late then.
Yeah, I have all these notes for myself, and one of them says that if decisions aren't made ahead of time and communicated, the decisions themselves don't disappear. They still have to be made, but now they shift to courts, systems, and sometimes strangers. So the decisions still come. It's just who's making them now.
Well, it's not so much the decision that the medical power of attorney makes. It's your decision on paper, speaking for being your voice when you can't be. We're just presenting that documentation to the hospital or the doctor on your behalf. They're your words, but you need to get your words down on paper before then.
Yeah, I love that. Alina, what do you think families should be talking about right now?
Yeah, so if you have a power of attorney, you need to be planning to help that person locate your financial documents, learn about your health conditions, things of that nature. Obviously, if you don't have one, you need to start thinking about, who do I want to take care of me when I can no longer take care of myself? because you need to get those documents in order as soon as possible. And I'm glad that Mike mentioned the advance directive, because that is a very important document that works hand in hand with the healthcare power of attorney, so that you can actually have in writing your treatment preferences for the end of your life, so that they don't have to make those hard decisions going, I wonder what they would have wanted. It takes the onus off of that person who's trying to make those decisions for you, because they have peace of mind that they know what you really wanted. So they can, even if it's a really difficult decision, they have that to rely on. So
Perfect.
absolutely.
That's exactly what Alina just said. I was going to say is not only next steps, start thinking about who or how, if it's a number of people, who would be a good power of attorney. But a power of attorney isn't just someone you trust who can make those decisions, medical decisions for you. It's somebody that you've had time to tell what you want done. Their job is to execute a plan for what you want. So, for example, my mom had Alzheimer's, and we thought we were going to be in a long Alzheimer's journey with her. In the middle of the journey, she got bladder cancer, and that's what took her life within weeks. But when she got bladder cancer, my sisters and I already knew what treatment she would or wouldn't want, because she had already gotten an advance directive in place. She put what she wanted in writing, and she had told us. So executing a plan for Mom was not what we wanted. We were acting on her behalf, and that's what I want. That's such a big takeaway that you brought up, is you want someone that you can share what you want and then let them execute your plan. That journey for your future is so much more peaceful for those that love you. It helps us do our jobs better and more effectively, because we're not having to take into consideration what causes a lot of chaos. And the patient or our clients, you're our priority. And if we haven't known you or don't have a history with you, we need those who know you well to guide us and help us do our job better.
And while it is difficult to think about these things, nobody really wants to think about them. If you do the hard work now, you're taking control of a situation that is eventually going to be out of your control.
Yeah. I was thinking when you were talking particularly, so I have 3 brothers, and I'm the oldest and I'm the boss. I know that's shocking to everyone. But I am, and my 3 brothers are probably my best friends in the whole world. We get along really, really well. We have our disagreements, but we are tight. I'm going to breakfast with them tomorrow morning, actually. And, but I think in an emotionally charged situation, if I did not know what Mom or Dad wanted, we would have 4 different opinions about, you have to stay here. Okay. We would have 4 different opinions, and even as well as we get along and do things together all the time, it would be so much better for us if we just knew, if we were executing a plan, because then we can continue to get along and each do the thing that it wasn't our choice. And so I love that. I love just thinking about it in terms of give me a plan and I will execute it. So I think that's great. I want to, let's look at your handout together real quick. So this is for you to take with you. You've got your definitions on the back. And then, of course, we've got our questions. And there are 5 questions that I would love for you to consider. And if you don't fill it out today, that's okay while you're here, but please fill it out. Who would speak for me medically if I couldn't? Who would manage my finances? And do they know where everything is? Have I clearly communicated what I would want? Do I have my legal documents in place, and are they accessible? And I love what these ladies said about in a pinch, something online might work, but I'll tell you what I say all the time. Google does not hold a law degree. It has never taken the bar. So probably Google is not the best place for that. I would say call an attorney that if they mess it up, they are also responsible for it. If something happened tomorrow, would my family have clarity or would they have confusion? And I think everybody in the room would say that they would want their family to have clarity. No one wants to cause confusion. So, and this is particularly important, obviously for everyone, but if you don't have a family member that lives close or that is able to help, or maybe you don't have children at all. We have a lot of attendees that do not have children. And having this plan in place, you certainly do not want a complete stranger managing your affairs. So what I found is actually, I have to shout out a lot of our attendees that don't have children. They are the best planners because they have planned ahead and they know they don't want a stranger to do that. So this is to take with you. Okay, before we do Q&A, so get ready. I'm going to go ahead and have my mic runners come and grab a couple of these mics. But what has not been said yet that you want to make sure that we say today that people walk away from? Mike?
I probably just reiterate the planning. It's just so important. So from now on, since about 2 years ago, we require, if someone engages with our service, we're just requiring them to have their will and their advance directive. We don't have the tools and the map to help them if we don't get those. And in the past, we had a couple instances where, one of our clients had a problem and then we didn't know what to do. So planning's got to be your number one priority right now.
Yeah. Okay. You got to share now.
And I would reiterate that, but I'm going to add the word thoughtful to planning. Thoughtful planning is super important, and it can keep everything from getting out of control in a guardianship. Because I don't know that I have ever seen or handled or heard of a guardianship that didn't get a little heated at some point.
So, okay.
And I would just tag on to that in the area of family dynamics, whatever family dynamics are unique to each of you, to take that into consideration as you're communicating with those close to you and making sure your wishes are known, but just really reining in some family dynamics that could be an issue when you're not able to help navigate that conversation.
Yeah, I have another note that says you may not control every outcome, but you can shape who walks that road with you and how decisions are made. Right? Can walk alongside somebody. Okay. All right. So here's how we do Q&A. I have 2 mic runners. So if you have a question, you'll raise your hand. One of my mic runners will come to you and they will make sure that you have a question and not a comment, because we love your comments and we love your stories, but from the stage, we need questions and we would love to hear your comments afterwards. So I've already seen a couple of hands raised.
Yes, I have a question. The attorney that put all this stuff together for me is now deceased. So you mentioned having it updated. So how frequently should you have those forms updated?
Oh, that's a great question. Alina?
Yeah. So if you already have forms in place, you've already done an estate plan, you have powers of attorney, a will, maybe a trust, you want to update those anytime you have a major change in your life where you think, you know what, I need to change my beneficiaries, or I need to change the people who have fiduciary powers in that power of attorney or in that trust in those situations. We definitely need to update your documents at that point. I also do a lot of updating documents for clients who have recently moved to a different state. And in that situation, you want an attorney in your new home state to make sure that your powers of attorney are going to be effective there. And if not, get them done again. Thank you.
Christy?
What about, would you consider a corporate trust company to be your POA, or?
To my knowledge, most corporate trust companies are not willing to act as a power of attorney. They will do your trust administration for you, but most of them do not act as powers of attorney, which is why people like Mike are important because he's stepping into a gap that is there.
Mhm.
You want to talk to more?
As far as I know, none of the trust companies that we work with will act in that capacity. Trust companies are great for growing and managing money, but they don't take on the responsibility like that in a lot of cases. And I will add to the previous lady's question, if you do have all of your documents in place, give them to some people that you know and love, because if you live by yourself and you go down and you go to the ER, no one's going to know who to call. But if your neighbor saw the ambulance come and they call your adult child or somebody, they know who to call. You need to let people know who's your power of attorney, who's your medical power of attorney in case of an emergency.
Yeah, I wish I could remember who I had talked to, but I was talking to someone who they had come into town to manage the affairs. It was after mom and dad had passed away, but they had already paid for a funeral out of pocket, and then they found a prepaid funeral in a desk. And so it's really important to do that ahead of and make sure people know where things are.
Yeah, absolutely. When we do an estate plan for our clients, the last thing we tell them is make sure you put it in a safe, dry, hopefully fireproof place, and let your agents and your successor trustees or PRs know where to find those documents and make sure they're all there. And I would also say, like, as far as we do, we give you a big binder where you can keep all of your important documents in one place so they don't have to hunt down that prepaid funeral. It's going to be there with all the rest of your documents. So,
and we didn't say this, but when does a POA and guardianship end?
So a guardianship and a power of attorney both expire at your death. The power of attorney can also end if you revoke it, but both of them definitely end at that.
I just needed to make sure that we said that from the stage because it's not an estate plan. It's only when
Absolutely.
You're living. Okay, perfect. All right. Who do we have next? We've got one up here. Oh, yep.
I have a question for Compass as far as placement. If we've toured, a lot of us have toured these places, and we kind of have a list of if I have to be moved, 1, 2, 3, and then something else happens, and that changes what those facilities offer, but our kids don't know how to navigate that. Do you have the ability to deal with all of the places we might have visited, or do you have certain ones that you are contracted with?
We're contracted with most all the facilities in the Oklahoma greater Metroplex area, and we're in and out of them from like the Guthrie area all the way down to Norman. There's my company and a couple of others, and all of us are free of charge to our clients that we serve, because the facilities, once we refer one, will pay our company a commission 30 days after you're placed. But this is the lane that I don't want to speak for my competitors, but the lane that Compass is in is if your children, if you've identified your top 3, and through Senior Living True Series, you all have opportunities to go see all these properties and determine which ones feel like a good fit. If you have my number and a health event should happen and your children are like, I don't know which ones maybe have current wonderful management, no management turnover, good care right now, they would be welcome to call me. And it doesn't matter if you've already identified, you've got amazing properties that are support systems here, sponsors here. So that's a beautiful thing. You've already done the legwork, but I'm happy just to be a free service for your children to call and say, currently, how are these 3 properties doing? Because they all ebb and flow. You know, it's a very, very hard industry to always be excellent. But I would be happy to do that. And there's no charge for that.
But I would say for clarity purposes, if you already know where you're moving to, then that's probably not a phone call that needs to be made, correct?
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But my point is, from being more of a social worker in the line of work I do, I have no attachment or commitment to any of the communities. It would just be my expertise because I'm in and out of these communities. So it's just a service. Did you say would it be possible for them to interview? Absolutely.
I get interview all 3 of them. What the heck? We got much anything, anything.
Oh, all three communities?
Well, everybody.
Oh,
Would it be good for the kids to meet with all of us? We're all, yes, very open to meet. And many times, if we can establish a relationship in any lane that we serve, that's good for your children to have a contact person. Absolutely.
I think talk to as many people as you need to talk to feel good. That's what I think. That's what I think. Anna, does Christy have one? Okay, sorry.
Have answered already with the comment about the point of attorney expiring at death, but I was wondering if you needed a power of attorney if you had a trust as well.
That's an attorney question, and I'm not one of those.
So I say yes, and we include them in all of our comprehensive plans because most trusts are set up, we set them up so that your successor trustee will step into that position when you become incapacitated. And your powers of attorney will also do that. Where they are helpful to work together is the trustee is only going to have authority over trust assets. So if there are any assets that haven't yet moved into the trust, your power of attorney is going to have access to those. And oftentimes that's the case for bank accounts and things that are payable on death to the trust. That's how they're going to get into the trust. So it is important to have both of those documents just to make sure that you're covered 360.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, Mr. Frazee.
Okay, I have a trust, and I've had that trust reviewed by some attorneys who rewrote another book of trusts. So here I've got this stack of stuff like that. Well, my point though is this: if the trust guy from the company who wrote my original trust comes to once a year and reviews it and says, "Oh, everything's fine." Okay, now I don't know if anything's in there about you know what would happen if I were to die, what she would do, so on. All I can do is say to the trust guy says this is adequate stuff for my estate. What do I do?
Well, what does he do?
So we could, and any attorney that does estate planning can review your trust for you, give you a synopsis of it, and say, hey, this is how it's going to work if that's what you're asking for.
How do I get your card?
I have cards at the table back there, right in front of those doors that are open in the middle. Thank you.
They're pretty good. Christy, I can't see you guys. It's because you're wearing animal print, so I can't see you. Blur with everything. Anna, what do you have?
Well, almost daily I get invitations, emails pertaining to taking out a reasonable loan and a reasonable repayment of that. And you know, right now, I know I can read them clearly and understand them, but if someone follows up on that and I hadn't completely deleted it, would it take an attorney to straighten that out for me? Do I have to have one on retainer?
Why don't you say
I'm not sure if I understand the question really. Let me try to clarify. So are we talking about like spam emails and mail of that?
Well, I consider them to be scams.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, as long as you don't fall for a scam, you're going to be okay. But at the moment that you do feel like you got into a situation that you want some advice getting out of, I would recommend contacting an attorney.
And I will say also we have we just did a scam seminar, and it's on YouTube, and it was so good, very good to have. Yep.
What if someone doesn't have capacity, doesn't realize they don't have capacity, and are totally unwilling to be tested or evaluated?
Mike, do you know?
Yeah. Welcome to my Monday through Friday. No, it happens all too much. I mean, one of the biggest obstacles that we have these days are, adult children trying to get their parents to plan ahead and they're like, no, I'm healthy as an ox. I don't need to do that. And we use the tool, the mini mental assessment, to provide a court-worthy document in order for families to gain guardianship of someone who's doesn't have capacity. And if they won't take the exam, then you note that and you write it up in your report along with what you saw during the assessment period of time at the location, and you turn that into the judge, and then it's going to be passed on to the judge to make that determination.
Yeah. The only thing I would add there is if they are refusing to take a test, normally in their life, if you look at the circumstances and what we call activities of daily living, or ADLs, their care for themselves, being able to feed themselves, shower, clean their home, wear clean clothes, not be able to operate the stove. There are all kinds of red flags that can also be proof that someone is not competent if they're refusing to take a test. Many times that would be documentation.
Okay, I think if let's do 2 more questions. Okay, I'm going to go Christy and then Anna. And then remember, you're writing down your questions that we don't get to because this is an important conversation. Yep, Herb.
I lead about 5 support groups, and I have a ton of caregivers in those who are in a world of hurt. I don't think they even have any idea what kind of documents they should have in place. They're too busy dealing with the issues they're dealing with. What advice can I give them other than to go see an attorney, which is probably the top one? But what documents do they need to really have, and I need to tell them? And maybe that's too much of a question to...
No, but my wheels are turning, and I think probably we need to have State Law Firm maybe put together a flyer that we can bring next month that says documents you need to avoid a guardian or going to guardianship court or something like that. And I think that's something that they could put together. But as a quick answer, I would say.
Yeah, at the minimum, they need a durable power of attorney for finances and a healthcare power of attorney. Those are the 2 documents that they need at a minimum. I would add the advance directive to that as well. And then depending on if they have assets they're worried about, then they need to start some estate planning as well. But yeah, that would be the minimum. And if they're looking for resources, I know this program is going to be on YouTube, so this might be a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree.
Elena, you talked about the cost of guardianship. What would be the cost of power of attorney? Sometimes finances are really prohibited in some situations to go directly and get a great power of attorney right away.
So, we're talking about a guardianship being a minimum of $3,500, but you could avoid that for about $1,000 or more, like $1,500, I think, for a couple. So
perfect. Okay, Anna, let's do last question.
Yes. Can you address the difference between an advance directive and a healthcare/medical power of attorney? I mean, they seem to be somewhat the same and often confused. And then also a related question would be when people refer to powers of attorney at the very beginning, you all mentioned durable, medical, and financial. And then somebody said later on in the program that durable was for financial decisions. So are there 3 kinds, or is durable a catch-all for everything, and how do they relate to advance directives?
Absolutely. So
wills, which is maybe the same thing as advance directive. I mean, where's the...
Yeah.
Anyway.
Absolutely. So durable power of attorney is that financial power of attorney. The terms are used interchangeably, but that's what they are. Your healthcare power of attorney, obviously just for your healthcare decisions. Sometimes those documents are combined into one durable power of attorney for finances and healthcare. Our firm does it in 2 separate documents. The difference between your healthcare power of attorney and the advance directive is that in that healthcare power of attorney, you're saying, if I can no longer make healthcare decisions in any circumstance, I want this person to do that for me. And it sets forth a decision-making hierarchies. They're saying, you know what, if I can blink yes or no, ask me. If I can't do that, think about the conversations that we had about my healthcare preferences and base your decisions off that. If we didn't have those conversations, I want you to put yourself in my shoes and do what you think I would have done, but at the very least, do what you believe is in my best interest based on the doctor's recommendations. When we get to the advanced directive, which is also called a living will, you're looking at very specific end-of-life scenarios where you may need life support. And if you can't take food or water by mouth, you might need artificially administered nutrition and hydration. So in that, you're looking at those specific scenarios regarding those end-of-life possibilities and deciding whether or not you want to receive those treatments. So it's very specific directions, whereas the healthcare power of attorney is more of a general, you can make my healthcare decisions. Even if I'm not at the end of my life, it's just, I can't tell the doctor what I want, so you can tell them for me.
Tell me if I'm wrong. What it sounds like to me is the medical POA is the who, and the advanced directive is the how.
Absolutely. But in all cases, that advanced directive is going to override anything in the power of attorney that it doesn't agree with. So that the bottom line is you don't want the power of attorney for healthcare to override the decisions you've made in your living will and advanced directive. You want them to honor those decisions even if they don't agree with them.
Okay. Yes.
If I could real quick. So we have actually a high percentage of clients that we're medical power of attorney for who do have adult children, but don't want to pass on the responsibility to their children to not remove the ventilator, not give them nutrition or hydration. They don't want to have to be the person to do that. So they'll look for a third party. But it's so important that you designate someone to be your medical power of attorney that you trust. But if it's an adult child and they want you to stick around, they might not, follow your advanced directive. And that advanced directive is a tool that's going to trump them.
Okay. All right. Let's give these guys a hand.